Welcome to City Cinematheque, where the art and pleasure of the movies are the subject of serious discussion. I'm your host, Jerry Carlson, and I teach film studies at the City College of the City University of New York. Today, it's our pleasure to present, as part of our series, American Mavericks, the 1961 Western, One-Eyed Jacks. It both stars Marlon Brando and is his single film as a director. At the time of its release, it wasn't really well understood, but through the years, it's come to be seen as a classic of the revision of the Western that began in the 1960s. We'll be talking about that and a number of other subjects after today's screening. Joining us again on City Cinematheque will be Gary Giddens, the noted critic and biographer. Now, enter into the very strange and compelling world of One-Eyed Jacks. Welcome back to City Cinematheque. I hope you've enjoyed this opportunity to see Marlon Brando's only directorial effort, One-Eyed Jacks, and a film of considerable strangeness, excellence, and beauty. There's a lot to talk about this film, and it's a pleasure to welcome back to City Cinematheque a good friend of our series, Gary Giddens. Many people know Gary for his 31 years as the jazz critic of the Village Voice and for his award-winning 2-volume biography of Bing Crosby. He's now hard at work on a biography of George Gershwin, out in 2025, we think. We hope.
Better be, yeah.
Better be. But one of the things that some folks may or may not know is Gary's deep dedication to film history through the years and his much writing about it, including his book, Warring Shadows. Welcome back, Gary.
Thank you. It's good to be here, Jim.
Great. So let's just start with Marlon Brando and his character. His character. This is not your average one-dimensional hero of any kind. So what do you make of this character that Brando makes and of his character arc?
Well, in a sense, he's playing an actor because he's always lying. He's always pretending to be somebody he's not, whether it's seducing the señorita or telling Dad that everything is fine with me and that we have no problems. Virtually everything he says in the first hour and a half of the movie is a lie. And then finally, when he tells Dad that he was in Sonora prison, he doesn't believe him. He says, "You're lying like what, as fast as a dog can trot," or something like that. So he's always performing, and I think. He's also sometimes performing, well, frequently, for the camera.
Right.
There are shots of him, one where he's got the red poncho and he's on the windowsill, where he not only looks great, but you know that he knows he looks great. There's a tremendous narcissism in some of those shots. He knows what his smile can do, how he can change the register of his scene. He's completely in control, and for once, he really has an equal to work against, I think, in Karl Malden.
Okay.
This is their third film together, but in On the Waterfront and even Streetcar, Malden is strictly supporting character.
Right.
Here, every time he shows up, a new energy level rises, and. The direction, nobody else has come in and said, "Oh, Brando didn't do this. I set up the shots." Charles Lang did apparently what Brando asked him to do. I'm sure he got a lot of advice. So some of these scenes that I think are particularly good are the close-ups, the dialogues between Brando and Malden. I was thinking that. Somebody, I think it may have been Blythe Danner, but I'm not sure. Somebody I interviewed about Crosby told me that, I think it was her, she was in the Actors Studio.
Right.
And this is 1954. And all the students are talking about Brando's performance in On the Waterfront. And I guess it was Strasberg who was teaching, said, "You all need to see The Country Girl. Nobody does close-ups like Bing Crosby." He's the star of that film. And sure enough, George Seaton, who directed it, gives him a lot of close-ups, and he has to do a lot of work.
Yeah, absolutely.
Without dialogue. And nobody does close-ups better than Carl Malden. They are phenomenal. You always know not only when he's thinking, but when his mind leaps someplace else.
Absolutely.
He does it almost always with his eyes. I don't know how he does it sometimes. Brando, we know, is putting on a performance, but somehow Malden just, he's no matter how much he lies, there's a transparency to it. He lets us.
Yeah, absolutely.
We're all in on it. Whereas at first, when Brando does the thing with this was my mother's ring, and I'd like you to wear it, you know. A lot of directors would have played, and actors would have played that scene so that you sort of chuckle and be on his side. Brando is so good being the fake, whatever part he's playing,
Right.
that you don't like him almost from the beginning. Well, you don't like him the first time you see him after he throws the banana peels and he steals this woman's ring and puts it in his mouth. So there's a tremendous strangeness here, because you go in thinking, especially after Malden turns out to be the betrayer, then Brando must be the good guy. But he's not a good guy. His whole life is lying. And at the end, the closing scene gives very little closure to the audience.
You know, one way of looking at this in the character arc is the way in which, you know, the 50s has been the great decade in terms of volume, and arguably in quality as well, of the Western. It dominates as absolutely as that, and the 60s is, you know, sometimes seen as the decade of the anti-Western. But that's a binary opposition between the two. And there's lots of places along the scale. And here, what you've got is a film that begins, the first shot is a kind of moral joke, that he's putting the banana peel on the plates of justice. Now, as you just said, from there, that can go as a kind of smirking parody from there. I mean, it can literally go in the Mel Brooks, you know,
Right.
direction. But no, that says, I'm just telling you that there's going to be some moral issues here, and then we begin with two bad guys, and it becomes a revenge story, and then we have, you know, the complication of the fact that the first bad guy, who is the betrayer, now is the official citizen and represents North American justice, you know, and nobody seems concerned about, oh, they all knew that I'm a bad guy, but they know I'm on the right side, you know.
One of the ironies of the relationship between, incidentally, two men who are named Dad and Kid, Rio,
Yeah.
is basically the kid.
Right.
In fact, in the book that started the whole thing, The Authentic Death of Henry Jones, you don't know until the last page that Dad's name is really Samuel Longworth. They don't even go there in the movie. But what I wanted to say is that they weaponize each other. When he does that thing with the bullets, it's like, boy, he's giving all this power. He's almost daring him to betray him. And then Longworth humiliates him in that an unbelievable scene, which would have worked in Mutiny on the Bounty with the whip. But he doesn't kill him.
Yeah.
And then,
Yeah.
you know, he breaks his hand, but he really breaks it. And by some miracle, this is the strangest thing in the whole plot, just by sitting around in Monterey on the beach for 6 weeks, somehow it heals well enough that he can still...
The recuperative powers of the California atmosphere.
What can we say? But they set each other up. I mean, you think, afterward, Rio's been through, you expect him to charge in. The movie would only be 10 minutes long, but instead he just says, "You're getting ahead of yourself, Dad. Nothing happened to me. I'm fine." And you figure he's working out for some kind of more complex revenge. And then when you realize it's deflowering
Yeah.
his stepdaughter. I mean, that's just vile. And there's so much. Let me take it from another angle. We know that Brando liked improvisation and that there's a lot of improvisation
Okay, yes.
in the dialogue. That they rewrote the script pages every day based on scenes that they would rehearse, and whatever was good in them they would write
Right.
down, and then it would become part of the scene. But the whole plot, this is what I think is really avant-garde about the film, feels improvised. Because if you try to tell the plot, it doesn't make sense. I mean, you have half the cast spending 6 weeks on their ass, sitting around, and you know, Ben Johnson, the little kid, comes over, and a Chinese kid offers him a fish, and he kicks it away. He can't even believe he's doing this, and we can't quite believe it either. And then finally, there's a moment when you feel maybe Rio really has turned into William S. Hart. He's really going to be a good guy. He's not going to kill Dad. He thinks Dad is in the sheriff's office. He's going to pick up, what's her name, Louisa, the daughter?
Right, yeah.
And they're going to go off someplace. But fate intervenes.
Right.
Everything goes wrong. So he ends up killing a bunch of people. But everything, there's a real existentialist quality here of no matter what your plans are, and these are professionals, but nothing works for them. They can't rob a bank successfully. They can't. Everything they do ends up with people dead.
And what is interesting is that the film, of course, is magnificent visually.
Yes.
Everybody's said that. And you have these two extraordinarily contrasting environments. Right. You know, you have the desert, you have the fact that they're operating in another culture, although, you know, they do glide between the two. I mean, both places, and this is what's interesting, both places are very hybrid at this point. I mean, Dad is married to, you know, a Mexican woman, Californian, you know, et cetera. But still, there's the whole notion of, okay, south of the border, that's where chaos,
That's one place where they really avoided all the cliches. There's no Monument Valley. There's no Anthony Mann mountain range. There's none of that. There's no hanging trees out of Baedeker. It's either a desert that looks like it could be in Lawrence of Arabia with the wind blowing against them, and those magnificent scenes shot against, I mean, some of it's rear projection, but who cares? The waves are incredible. I mean, people make a joke about it because it took him he waited a long time to get the right waves, but the waves are fantastic, and they have a symbolic power in the film.
Absolutely, because this notion of the transition from, okay, we can go down to this lawless desert-like place, we can mess around there, and then we just escape up to where everything will be hunky-dory.
Right.
We go from the desert to some of the most beautiful waves you've ever seen. But coming back to your point, that existential chaos follows everywhere.
Right.
It's inescapable in the film. The way in which Dad has constructed this life. I mean, you know, the old plotting cliche, a stranger comes to town. Everything is fine until Rio shows up again, and then, you know, the disintegration begins.
We don't know exactly how, or at least I don't know from what I've read, what Paramount did to make it more agreeable to them besides shortening the film.
Right.
But the ending, it's one of those Hollywood things that they do, that if you're the kind of person who it needs a happy ending and you want to believe it, you can be just like the Señoritas who fall for his blarney and say, well, yes, he'll be back. In 6 months, that jackass in the window, as he describes himself, will be there and they'll live happily ever after. But we have actually seen 2 hours and 20 minutes of absolute evidence that that's never going to happen. I mean, he can't go to Mexico. There's no place in California that he's not going to be hunted down. She's going to raise the baby as a single mother with the help of her mother. And yet, that ending, he starts to ride off. She keeps telling him, go, 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 before they come and get you. She waves, and then he turns around, and the only thing he can do after that wave is say, "Hi-ho, Silver!" You know, who was that masked man? It is the corniest moment in the film.
Right.
But it's another lie.
Well, yes, just to put it in the context of somebody else who quite cheerfully ends a film with a lie in almost the same moment is Hitchcock in Psycho, in which at the end the psychologist comes in and explains everything
Right.
about Norman Bates. And if you want to say, you know, I took psychology in college, that makes just a heck of a lot of sense. And you're saying, and you were the C student in that class,
Right?
Because it doesn't make you no. And but the offer is there. If you want to take it, you can take it.
That's right.
But ultimately, it's a purposely false ending in which you're saying, no, this is much more open than that. Just a comment.
We should talk about the title in terms of this issue.
Absolutely. So, G. Gary.
Well,
One-Eyed Jacks. Talk to me.
I think it's a superb title. It's, of course, after the card where the two suits have one-eyed jacks in the picture cards. Brando says to Malden, "You're a one-eyed jack. Everybody thinks they know you, but I've seen the other side." But he is, but Brando is just as much the one-eyed jack. I mean, he is always performing. He's always got one side of himself hidden. And he's such a good actor that he sells us at the same time that he sells everybody else. I mean, everybody believes him. You know, it takes, a thief to catch a thief. But Malden falls for it completely. Yeah. The first time he says, "Dad, you're getting ahead of yourself." And he's like so relieved, I got away with it.
So let's go back to some of the acting in the film. Then we can return to other things, because we've emphasized Malden and Brando. And, you know, this is a moment in which the Actors Studio and a number of, the people created by the Actors Studio, are moving through television and Broadway into film. You have another kind of revisionist Western, the Left-Handed Gun with Paul Newman, who's coming out of here. But this is a whole other sense of characterization in a lot of ways, coming into the Western. So how do you think Brando handles this kind of very interesting cast of characters?
I would love to know who chose all these people, because the cast is incredible. I mean, you've got Elijah Cook, who kills Ben Johnson, for Christ's sake. Ben Johnson gives maybe his best performance. Slim Pickens, I think, is his best performance by far.
Yeah.
I mean, Jesus, he's really a vile figure. There's just nothing softening that at all. Ray Teal shows up for a minute. What's his name? The crazy guy from the Kubrick films,
Timothy Carey.
Timothy Carey. The great Katie Hirado. It's an extraordinary cast, which shows, I think, a real feeling for that kind of the most wonderful thing about Hollywood was the contract players that the studios had. Those people we never tire of. I find it fascinating. For a minute and a half, Brando had hired Kubrick to direct it.
Right.
We don't know exactly what, but we do know that it had a fight over the casting of Longworth, and Kubrick wanted to use Spencer Tracy. Now, this was a year before Judgment at Nuremberg. Right. He was an old guy with white hair. It would have killed the film.
Right.
Great actor that he was. There's just no way. They're not equals on any level.
Right.
And, I mean, he would be grandfather Longworth instead of dad.
Absolutely.
So the casting is superb, and I can't help but assume that Brando's reputation is already, certainly among actors,
right,
totally established, that he's raising everybody's game.
Right.
Because everybody in the film is great. There just isn't a fake moment.
Absolutely. I want to give a very nice shout out to the great Katie Hirado. In this, because I am an academic, so I had to go to these conferences and stuff. And the very fine scholar Charles Ramirez-Berg was talking, about how there are these simplified notions. It's very easy to talk about, yes, there's terrible stereotyping, yes, there's racism, etc. But in balance to that, you've got people who have been underappreciated for both their talent and actually the roles they played and the depth. And if you look at this role and Katie Hirado in High Noon, you have two of the richest, agency-filled, intelligent women of Latin descent in American cinema, and when she's there, she holds the screen completely, and she has this moral intelligence. She's negotiating between, the innocence of her daughter and that. Everything she knows about these deceptive guys.
This is a conspicuously non-racist movie.
Correct.
The most appealing man in the entire film is Modesto, the guy that Brando escapes from the prison, and his death rattles us. It's maybe the one death in the film that really rattles us. And then he has, I assume it's Brando's idea, when he's riding to the hell that he's never going to suspect, you see that he's still barely alive, and I mean, it's chilling. It's absolutely chilling. Now, there's another movie that came out that was made at the same time, but it came out a year and a half earlier, that I saw as a kid, as I did this, and loved it as a kid, and loved it just maybe 10 years ago when I wrote about it, and now I can't sit through it, is Rio Bravo, because of the racism. Because at some point, you just can't handle, and you can't slough it off and say, the stereotyping, the little Spanish guy who, with a big accent, who's sort of an idiot, and he's married to a big fat woman. Enough. Everybody I know says you can't screen Breakfast with Tiffany anymore. We used to laugh at Mickey Rooney. Nobody's laughing now.
Correct.
And I think
those who don't remember, Mickey Rooney plays a Japanese neighbor, and it is the most vile portrayal, stereotypical portrayal one has seen. Yeah, I mean, it makes you yearn for some of the World War II movies with the Japanese pilots who are at least skilled.
Yes. But this film, you just don't have that.
Yeah.
And we should note that, because so many of those Westerns that go south of the border do have stereotypes.
Right. Well, one should say that he has been he's been involved in the Brando in the Viva Zapata, project. He is throughout. He, later on, he becomes very clear what his politics are. He rejects the Oscar, etc. But he's always, on the side of this. I mean, he was, he was a well-known person at the Palladium here in New York because he was a huge Latin music fan. I think I even saw one of these CBS "You Are There" in their house kinds of things, and it's with Brando like in his apartment in New York with his drums, not the trap set, but with Latin drums. So this
he marched with Dr. King.
Absolutely. So this is so in that sense, his construction of this story world and what we would now consider to be a very interestingly historical projection of a multicultural thing. And by the way, they are captured by the rurales. These guys, they are not incompetent.
That's right. And this is not, we don't need no stinking badges. These are cops who know what they're doing.
They know what they're doing.
They're not sadists, however bad the prison clearly is run by sadists. But they're very professional, the way they, in fact, the scene where Karl Malden traps him is somewhat similar in that there's a big circle of deputies on the roofs. That's a very and what's her name? Pellicer. We haven't even mentioned.
Pellicer. Yeah. Pellicer.
I can't think of any other. Most directors would have cast Natalie Wood or somebody. with dyed black hair and a little brown face, and she's even the nature of her beauty is very particular, and it's not standard Hollywood.
Well, and she is, for this, seduction that then turns into a moral crisis for him.
Because she's in charge.
Because she's in charge, absolutely. So she's this extraordinary combination of youth and innocence, but again, of a moral intelligence and agency that's superior to his.
And which probably comes from the fact that her mother is Katie Hirado.
I'm voting with you.
I mean, when she stands up to Dad in that last scene where they're having dinner. And suddenly he reverts to this racist. I took you out of the bean fields.
Right.
And she's saying, well, I'm very grateful for all that you did, but I can't live with you anymore. You're beneath my contempt.
Yeah.
She doesn't say that in so many words. She doesn't have to. She has those eyes.
And kind of a last point is coming back to the rhythm of the film, because we have all of this waiting, we have all of this kind of calculating until it comes, but then the film has these just outbursts, and we have both the famous physicality of Brando. When he explodes, he changes the entire scene. But then this is the time when Karl Malden gets to do that as a bad guy as well.
Oh, the relish that he displays in the whipping.
Yeah.
Or when he says in the prisons, when Brando's imprisoned, I'm going to personally hang you with a smile. Everybody is very committed. All the actors are really committed. I mean, Ben Johnson, what he does here, you would never have expected it from the John Ford films, good as they are. You just wouldn't.
Okay, so we're going to have to. I have no problem ending with the greatness of Ben Johnson in whatever Western he's ever been in. But we've run out of time for. There we go. So, if you'd like today's episode of City Cinematheque and you'd like to join us again, you can find out all about that at our website. Please go to www.tv.cuny.edu. There you're going to find the schedule for City Cinematheque, all of the schedule for City University Television, all of our programming, and ways to communicate with us. And we would like to hear from you. So please visit www.tv.cuny.edu. Gary, always a pleasure to have you here. A rich discussion. We could go on, but the clock is ticking, and
There you go.
I hope our viewers continue the discussion at home.
Okay.
Okay, great. Well, and thanks for joining us here today, and join us again as we continue our stroll through the archives of film history. It's bye for now.